One of the most renowned fighters against apartheid regime for the rights of the black population, he won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993. From September 3, 1998 to June 14, 1999, he was the General Secretary of the Non-Aligned Movement. He is an honorary member of more than 50 international universities. Right, as South African High Commissioner to Ghana, Jeanette Ndlovu, has described the late president as a man who worked to better the lives of others. She was speaking to my colleague Emmanuel Ante earlier today.
Right. Now, first of all, our condolence to you and the people that work here and the people of South Africa as a whole. I receive our condolence from Joy News team. Now, first of all, can you tell us a bit, what is your fondest memory of the late former president?
Well, thank you, and good morning to you and your listeners. I think the fondest memory is that this man who seemed to be so flawless, brought us freedom to our country. This man spent 27 years in prison, so that we as South Africans, black and white together, can enjoy the freedom that we do today. I also remember the fierce fight. He was a man of peace, but he put up a fierce fight against poverty. He put up a fierce fight against HIV and AIDS. He fought for the restoration of the dignity of black people. So for us, we have very fond memories of him. He put South Africa on the global stage, and Africans benefited collectively because he reclaimed the dignity of black people everywhere. And as we mourn his loss, we also need to celebrate his life, because we as Africans can look up to Mandela and say, Mandela, thank you, Ayiko, because of the work that he did for us.
Now, firstly, how did you receive the news of his demise?
Well, we got calls, SMSs from all over South Africa. South Africans are currently in deep mourning. They are mourning the loss of the greatest son that we have ever had, Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, a man who said, if need be, he is willing to die for the cause of the African people. And so we see him coming out of prison and going across the continent and making sure that we as Africans work together to reclaim the dignity of our continent. He was tireless in his efforts to make sure that the voices of African people, who for the most part were marginalized on the global stage, Mandela came in and occupied that space on behalf of the peoples of Africa. And today we are respected everywhere. The whole world today is mourning the loss of Nelson Mandela, but also celebrating the rich legacy that he has left for us.
Right. Now, when we got in earlier on, I saw the emotions on your face and all that. Yesterday night, when you received the news of his demise, what went on in your heart and in your head?
I just went, this is an end of an era, the Madiba era, because even though he had been sick for a while, you could see from all of us South Africans that we were hoping that he will be with us for much longer. We knew that he couldn't operate the way he used to operate, but just having him on this planet with us, he will continue to inspire many people. The other day I was in Kumasi, and a young lady came to me and said, "Oh, ma'am, are you from South Africa?" I said, "Yes, how did you know?" She said, "I'm praying for Madiba." This is a young girl who probably was not born when Madiba started his fight for freedom. So that's the kind of emotion that you get when you talk about Madiba. Yes, he was sick, but of course we wanted him with us much longer, even if it's just to inspire us to continue to implement his ideals. But now he is gone, and we can only say, rest in peace.
Mtoba Chapi is a South African journalist. He's joined us over the telephone now. We'll talk to him about what's going on in South Africa. Hello, Mtoba.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Okay, considering the circumstance we are in, we find ourselves in today.
I agree. But tell us about the general mood in South Africa now.
The mood is, it's split into two. You have people who are sad at the loss of Nelson Mandela,
right,
and you have people who are celebrating the life of Nelson Mandela. A lot of people have basically, started debates talking about South Africa, where we are right now. Are we headed the way that Nelson Mandela wanted us to or envisioned us to be at the current moment? And also just basically celebrating the great life of a man who achieved what, most people in their lifetime are not going to achieve. We are inspired, by a lot of South Africans are inspired, including myself. Just waking up in the morning, you feel, whenever, for example, you come across a challenge, you just think about a quote that Nelson Mandela said, it seems impossible until it's done. Something like that just inspires you in your everyday life, in everything that you do, that Nelson Mandela says. So you basically have that voice in the back of your head about things that he said in his life. And it's a bittersweet thing.
Over the next few days, tell us what we're going to see happen in South Africa as far as his death is concerned.
There are a few memorial services that have been planned. One for the nation, one for his party, the ANC. His body is also going to be transported to where he grew up, where he spent most of his childhood, in Kunu, which is in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. And it is said that, so far what you've heard, and this might change, but it is said that his funeral might be next week, Saturday. This is on the 14th of December. So right now what's happening is, obviously people from around the world are going to be coming into South Africa. President Obama is going to be here at the memorial service, and a lot of people are coming in, and some of you might have seen tributes that are coming in from around the world about Nelson Mandela. So it's basically, there's a lot that has been planned. The nation is just in mourning, and basically it's going to be a busy week for South Africa.
Tell us about Umata. What's happening there?
What's happening in?
Tell us about Umata and what's happening there. His best home.
His best home in Ukunu.
Right. Tell us about it.
I'm sure the people in Ukunu must feel a great loss, especially about a man who's come and icon from that very remote area. It's a village that doesn't have a lot of people in it, but there's a lot of love for Nelson Mandela. There's a lot of people who have gone there over the past few years, especially since he started becoming ill, going to Kunu and Bezo, the places that he grew up in, just to go document and speak to the people about his life. So the mood is kind of, as expected, is very low from the people. A lot of people who grew up with him or knew him as an elder have been sharing about their experiences and what they know about him. So it's pretty tough for some people coming from the area. But it's also,
Go ahead, Ntomba.
So I'm saying it's also going to be a hectic week for them because they're going to the area especially is going to be getting a lot of visits from people from overseas. So they're going to be they're going to be talking over and over and over about Nelson Mandela. So I'm sure they're anticipating a very long week.
What many have been arguing is that the death of Nelson Mandela could also mean that South Africa will just be united at this moment for a while, but the very core is then broken. I know Archbishop Desmond Tutu is spoken against this, but what are your thoughts?
About the death of Nelson Mandela causing division? Or
yes.
I think that is untrue. It's basically, I think, maybe the international media trying to cause a stir or trying to, sell whatever they're offering. But South Africa has gone way beyond that. No racial segregation is ever going to happen in this country again. That's something that I can say for sure, which is something that Nelson Mandela even said in his inauguration speech on 10 May in 1994. He did say to the world that never shall it be that this land will be controlled, or one man will be controlled by one, will be segregated by one over another. So we don't see, as South Africans, we don't see it like that. But as South Africans, we sort of feel that the people who are in power right now, who are controlling the African National Congress, for example, are not offering enough for the people going forward, and we'd just like to see more change. And it's going to be interesting what's going to happen next year in the elections, because South Africa is voting next year, and we're also celebrating 20 years of democracy. So we are basically looking forward rather than looking backwards, I would say.
How easy would it be for South Africa to recover from this loss?
It's going to be hard. I mean, I woke up this morning when I heard about it at 3 o'clock in the morning. I just felt like I lost a parent. And this is something that I'm sure 99% of South Africa feels. It just feels like you've lost a big part of your life. And it's just going to take a while to sink in. A lot of us are still trying to process it. It's a heavy thing to deal with. I mean, imagine losing a parent. That's how I would put it.
How has that affected the ANC? How has the ANC come out to express its grief?
The people of the ANC is like, for example, outside his Houghton home where he passed away, and outside his Soweto home where he used to live, the African National Congress is basically celebrating the life of Nelson Mandela, which is the right thing to do. I mean, the man was 95 years old, and maybe most of us wish that you could at least reach 100, but 95 is a long way, and he lived a long time. And we just feel as South Africans, we have this saying as South Africans that we have this belief that if a person dies at an old age, you don't mourn, you don't cry, but you basically celebrate their life, and that's what the African National Congress is doing, celebrating what Nelson Mandela was able. Nelson Mandela and his co-founders, you may say, of the new South Africa, the role that they played in where we are. So that's what they've been doing. I mean, singing liberation songs outside his home, and just basically remembering where South Africa comes from, but also celebrating the fact that, Nelson Mandela lived, like Barack Obama said earlier today.
Thank you very much, Ntomba. Ntomba Chapi is a South African journalist. He joined us over the telephone from South Africa. We've been talking how the current mood in South Africa, how the ANC has been responding, how South Africa is going to recover from this. And pretty shortly, we'll go to Kenya as well. You recall that his influence was not only in South Africa, but in the rest of southern Africa, which also includes the East Africa. And so we'll go to Kenya in a bit and talk to Jared Umbwe, who is a Kenyan journalist with KBC. But in the meantime, let's go to Sogakopa. You recall that there's also an important event here in Ghana today. Let's go to Sogakopa now.
Value addition is therefore key to reducing post-harvest losses in the value chain. As I've mentioned already, the 10 key fish processing factory at Elmina will help to reduce post-harvest losses and increase the profitability of operators in the small-scale fishing industry. Toby Chairman, under a World Bank-sponsored project, measures are being undertaken to increase the share of value addition in the sector by focusing on value chain development and implementation, fish health, and fish product trade and information systems. However, in spite of these and other efforts, some people resort to illegal fishing practices by using chemicals, unapproved net sizes that have a negative impact on fisheries and aquaculture development. Toby Chairman, you recall that a few months ago, the issue of formalin for the preservation of fish in some parts of the country became topical. My understanding is that the Ministry of Fisheries and Aquaculture Development has taken steps to curb such practices by educating the stakeholders and also offering test kits to facilitate detection of chemical contamination in fish. Let me therefore take the opportunity to advise stakeholders in the fish production chain in their own interest and in that of the nation to adhere to acceptable standards for the handling and preservation of fish. It is my hope that with the establishment of the Fisheries Enforcement Unit, the integrity of fishing activities will be jealously guarded to ensure that the fish catch from our territorial waters is wholesome. The enforcement unit are to monitor, control, and provide surveillance of all fishing operations within Ghana's territorial waters. Toby Chairman, as we enter the dry season, we need to adopt safe practices to curb the incidence of bushfires, especially in the rice-producing areas of our country. Bushfires result in degrading the environment and impact on climate change. The effects of climate change on agriculture are of concern as it affects food security. Let us, as citizens, guard against indiscriminate lighting of fires that destroys our fields and environment. Toby Chairman, in the 2014 budget statement, government shows its commitment to agricultural development by seeking to reduce food and nutrition insecurity through modernized agriculture, management of national strategic stocks for emergencies, and the establishment of effective early warning systems. As we leave this Durban grant, the call is to reduce post-harvest losses for sustainable food security and nutrition. Let me conclude, Toby Chairman, on behalf of the President of the Republic of Ghana and on behalf of the people of Ghana, extend hearty congratulations to Ghana's farmers, fishermen, and fisherwomen. As the year 2013 is coming to an end, let me also take the opportunity to wish all of us a happy Christmas in advance, and in advance, a prosperous New Year. May God bless this great nation. Thank you.
Right, so you're welcome back from Sogakope, where Vice President Parkwesi Mr. Arthur has addressed the gathering at this year's Farmers' Day celebration in Ghana. And you hear more about this in subsequent bulletins. But messages have been pouring in on social media. Now, Nigeria is officially declared 3 days of national mourning for Nelson Mandela, and Eiffel Tower is also lit up in the colors of the South African flag in honor of Nelson Mandela. Meanwhile, the Premier League confirms this weekend's matches will be preceded by minutes of applause to mark the life and achievements of Nelson Mandela. I'll tell you a lot more of things happening across the globe in honor of Nelson Mandela. But right now, Jared Umbui is a Kenyan journalist with KBC. He's joined us over the telephone. We'll find out the current mood in Kenya as well. Hello, Jared.
Hello, good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing well. So just to comment about Mandela, this morning Kenyan media houses actually focused on relaying previous messages, mostly documentaries and also anything related in relation to Mandela's life and success against apartheid. Early in the morning also we had the president, he released information about his message, message to Mandela's family and also to South Africans. In Kenya, Mandela was a highly respected person, and Kenyans still respect him as an African statesman.
Jared, tell us about how Nelson Mandela influenced Kenyans generally.
Okay, Mandela influenced Kenya in a way. At the moment, Kenyans, we are talking about transition and what he did as a leader who led South Africa for only a term, and he left power. He was able to unite South Africa. We remember very well that he talked about. We remember him over being a leader who says South Africa is a country of rainbow colors. In other words, every person was included. Now, marrying that with what Kenya had in 2007 and also previous years, it reminds us that Mandela, we can do something for Mandela in the sense of uniting this country. Remember that Kenya is trying to build after the 2007 post-election violence, and it's a journey that also we can borrow best practices from here and there.
What will we see Kenya do in the next few days in remembrance of Nelson Mandela?
At the moment, I'll say there's nothing specific that Kenyans are doing as individuals, apart from just talking about him. And earlier, as I stated, that what the media is doing, the media has focused on playing South African patriotic songs and also playing the African anthem. Like the national broadcaster today, we are focused on holding interviews and also playing documentaries on Nelson Mandela.
We know Nelson Mandela and the legacy that he left behind, considering his influence on Kenya. Did his death necessarily prompt did it necessarily prompt Kenyans from demanding more from their president, Uhuru Kenyatta?
Can you repeat that question, please?
I'm saying, considering the kind of person Nelson Mandela is, did his death necessarily prompt any feeling in Kenyans to demand more from their own president, their own leader?
Yes, this morning actually debate came up because we understand Mandela only was the president for one term, but his legacy lives today. And Kenyans are not really likely to pressure the president to serve for one term in Kenya or any other East African country because there is a quick disassociation with such kind of practices, because actually in the East African region there is this bit of psychophancy rather than critical analysis of issues.
Thank you very much, Jared. Jared Umbui is a Kenyan journalist. He's a Kenyan journalist with KBC. He joined us from there. We've been talking about how Kenya is also receiving this news and the mood in Kenya as well. So I was telling you about things that has been happening around the world. In the UK, for instance, the Prime Minister has signed Nelson Mandela's condolence book, and in many more to come. We understand that. Pretty shortly, I'll bring you news from former President Kufuor as well. But I was telling you earlier, a minute's applause will be held before kickoff at all 10 weekend Premier League football matches in tribute to Nelson Mandela. It's one of the things that is happening around the world, and also hundreds are in Nelson Mandela Square paying their last respect to Madiba with flowers and pictures. And also at Archbishop Desmond Tutu's led a short but moving prayer for Nelson Mandela. I'll tell you more about what has been happening around the world in remembrance of Nelson Mandela. But former President John Ejekun Kufuor has described the passing away of 95-year-old Nelson Mandela as expected but shocking. He is a real hero, a rare man, a rare human, servant leader, and a man who will not be forgotten easily. John Kufuor said this on Joy FM Super Morning Show on Friday. Now, South Africa's first black president and anti-apartheid icon, Nelson Mandela, died last Thursday. And this morning to Joy News Television has been speaking with him from his home. Here's a conversation between himself and my colleague Emmanuel Ante.
Longevity, 95 years, and also ill health, became like natural to expect that he was nearing death. So when it happened, eventually happened, it wasn't shocking. But I was deeply sad because this was a man who'd done so much, not only for his country or for Africa, but for humanity generally. That when a person like that passes, naturally everybody should stop, at least for a while, to mourn and to wish him a restful peace. So that's how I took it.
Right. Now, sir, what's your personal encounter with him?
Well, I was privileged to have met him quite a few times during my tenure as president. And every occasion, this man I found to be so relaxed and so human. So devoid of pretensions, pomposity. He carried, I wouldn't say power, but is it influence or whatever, so easily and lightly that people could relate with him one-on-one in a very normal way. He was a wise man. He had a sense of humor. And in my case, he readily made me feel that there was a bond between him and Ghana. I discovered that he had Ghanaian grandchildren. Ghanaian had married a daughter of his, and that relaxed me the more with him.
Well, now, what legacy would you say he has left, in your own opinion? A lot of people have different versions of their own opinion of his legacy that he's left. In your situation, what would you remember him for the most, and what do you think he has left that people should follow?
Legacy of tolerance, respect for humanity, and love of humanity too. When he eventually came to power, after 27 years of imprisonment under the apartheid regime, he didn't display the bitterness that perhaps most of us would have displayed. And he rather propounded a concept of inclusiveness. He talked of a rainbow society, and he encouraged his people and government to hold together to move their country forward. I believe we can all learn from that. When we get chance to become leaders, we have to eschew any trait or character that would seem like dividing. And divide and rule policy should be out of the system altogether. We should all hold together. The important thing is that we should all feel we share common citizenship, which is the main thing, citizenship with rights. And that the leader is only ahead of us to motivate us to grow into a genuine and real nationhood. You can't say you are Ghanaian and at the same time do things that would discriminate against people who are not, say, from your tribe or your religion or, say, gender or whatever. No. Main thing is you are human, you are Ghanaian. So the leader should know that. And the leader should be there, not to lord it on us, but to serve all of us. And you do that with, you try very hard with transparency and accountability. Because the power really is in the people. And if they accept or do you the honor to come and lead them, you don't grab it and then turn it on them. That's not right. The Constitution, which we must all uphold, does not allow that. Mandela was a fine example of such leadership.
Sir, would you involve yourself in any of his burial ceremonies, being an associate of his or a friend of his? Would you...
You flatter me, you elevate me so much. I'm sure the whole world would be there, and everybody would want to be identified with the ceremonies of seeing him off. If I can, I would go. But even if I do not get the chance to go, I am mourning him in my heart. He's a man after my heart, and I pray that many of us living, especially the youth, would try to emulate him.
Now, your final words to his family and the people of South Africa and the world as a whole.
I would say he, by any measure, he's a global person, a hero who lived very well, not only for himself, but for family, for nation, for humanity. And even as we mourn him, we should thank God that such a person has come across the world. And this is why the whole world is mourning him. So I would say my condolences are out to the wife, children, family, and nation, and to his government for his passing, and that may God give him a restful place.
Thank you very much for your time. You've been here. You heard the former President of the Republic of Ghana.
We had a conversation between Joy News' Emmanuel Ante and former President John Kufuor on the death of Nelson Mandela. Meanwhile, tributes from all over the world have been pouring in. South Africa's rugby team, the Springboks, pay moving tribute to Nelson Mandela. Also, Richard Branson, I'm sure you might know him, Sir Richard Branson, says Madiba's strength was in his compassion, moral courage, and a wonderful ability to bring light to any situation. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on his Twitter handle has paid tribute also to the person, has touched on the person of Nelson Mandela. And then there is one from Pope Francis, who praised Nelson Mandela for forging new South Africa built on non-violence and reconciliation. I'll tell you more about what's been happening around the world. There's more ahead on this special coverage of Nelson Mandela's death and his passing. Don't go away. You're welcome back to News Today. This is a special coverage of the passing of Nelson Mandela on Joy News. Anne Haxman de Costa is a journalist in Juba, South Sudan. She's joined us over the telephone. We'll find out the mood there as well. Hello, Anne.
Hello, Anne.
How are you, Anne?
Yes, well, in South Sudan, we're also mourning.
When you say South Sudan is mourning, how exactly do you mean?
Well, the Ministry of Information just gave out a statement that the government is mourning, and so are all the people of South Sudan. And the flags will be not raised today, but halfway.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that, Anne. If you could come again.
And people on the internet are giving all comments, how sad they are, how they love Nelson Mandela, how they hope that also the government of South Sudan would be more like South Africa.
How did Nelson Mandela influence life in South Sudan?
So I'm not hearing you very clear.
I'm asking, how did Nelson Mandela's own life influence other lives in South Sudan, the general life in South Sudan?
Well, people, they were always looking for Nelson Mandela as really did something good for South Africa. And of course, as you know, South Sudan is just a very new country, and they always hope to get this country, and he was an example for them.
In Nigeria, 3 days of mourning, national mourning, have been declared. Is South Sudan doing anything?
Yes, South Sudan is also going to have mourning, not a national mourning, but they have the flag hovering, and the president, who is at the moment in France, he sent a letter of condolence to his David Zuma. And for the coming 3 days, the flags will not be raised, so that is a sign of national mourning, but not an official national mourning.
And we'll leave it here for now. Anne Haxman de Costa is a journalist in Juba, South Sudan, and she joined us with how South Sudan is also reacting to the death of Nelson Mandela. Solomon Watkins is also a Liberian journalist. He's joined us from there over the telephone. Hello, Solomon. Hello. Right. How is Liberia reacting to the news of Nelson Mandela's passing?
Basically, as you may be aware, the world today is celebrating the death of Nelson Mandela, and Liberia is no exception. The president this morning, I listened to her shortly, she described the death of Nelson Mandela as an irreversible death lost to Africa. So it is terrible that's a death that no man can beyond expectation. Not only to the people of South Africa, but to Africa and the rest of the world, because the international community themselves also recognize Nelson Mandela to be a hero and to be somebody who is of great value.
Liberia itself, for a long time, had its own struggles, and on this day, I just want to find out what would be some of those lessons that Liberians would draw from the life of Nelson Mandela.
Basically, as you may be aware, Liberia went through 14 years civil crisis, and considering the kind of trend of South Africa and looking at Liberia, we have similarities. The people of Liberia today are in tears. The people of Liberia today are weeping and crying because looking at a strong man in the history of Africa who today gave his life, who was superpowered by death, and they are also in sympathy. Maybe what I can tell you also is that there is not enough that I can tell you relative to programs and all of them. But we are currently heading for the South African embassy to see what is happening there. I'm not in there this morning, but we are heading there to see what is happening at the South African embassy. But what is to my notice currently, Liberians, including diplomats, our ministers, foreign ministers are all heading for the South African embassy to begin to pay their tribute at the embassy.
Is there any special event in Liberia to commemorate the passing of Nelson Mandela?
Come again?
I'm asking if there is any special event in Liberia to commemorate the passing of Nelson Mandela.
Basically, the leadership. Liberians admire Nelson Mandela for his leadership posture. They believe that Mr. Mandela he exhibited a good leadership posture for which they can never forget him for. So the people of Liberia currently what they are thinking about is as to whether they can have a kind of president or a kind of leader like Nelson Mandela. And who would be the next Nelson Mandela is a question on mind that most Liberians are now asking. Who would be the next Nelson Mandela in Africa and Liberia? So deliver Liberia from reported poverty, corruption, hardship, and other unprecedented issues that are confronting the country now.
Is Liberia hopeful that Africa would find another Nelson Mandela?
That's the question basically that is on the mind of everyone. Will Liberia produce the Nelson Mandela, or will Africa ever have another Nelson Mandela? But in the mind of people, they believe that this can actually come to reality. But the time is not very soon. The time is not very soon. It's not timely. It will last for a very long period because African leaders are yet to recognize. And today, if you see in the eyes of people, in the eyes of Liberians here in the capital of Monrovia, that I'm sitting right on Broad Street and thinking about getting on the vehicle to get on car to go at the South African embassy. I'm telling you that students for school, they are all being instigated, even though the information this morning it did not go down to the grassroots until the radio stations begin to pick it up. And you get students, you got people who can react now to the depth of Nelson Mandela.
I'm grateful you joined us, Solomon, on News Today. Solomon Watkins is a Liberian journalist who joined us from Liberia. Let's go to Zimbabwe now, where a journalist, Privilege Musvanhiri, is also joining us over the telephone from Zimbabwe, like I told you earlier. Hello, Privilege.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Hello?
I'm asking, how are you?
I'm good, and you? How are you?
I'm very well. But tell us, what's the current mood in Zimbabwe?
Regarding hello?
Hello, Privilege. I'm asking, what's the current mood in Zimbabwe?
Okay, regarding the passing on of former South African President Nelson Mandela.
Right.
Okay. It has not been received with shock as such, but you find that a lot of people are paying homage and respect to the former South African president. Today, if you search on the social media sites, particularly Facebook and Twitter in Zimbabwe, there are vast messages coming from different people from different age groups who are expressing their condolences to the South African.
Thank you very much, Privilege. Privilege Musvanhiri is a Zimbabwean journalist, and he joined us from there. But around the world, a lot of things are going on today in commemoration to remember Nelson Mandela and his passing. I told you earlier that the Eiffel Tower has been lit in the colors of South Africa, the South African national flag. And then also in the UK, number 10 Downing Street, the UK flag as well as that of South Africa will fly at half-mast. And the Premier League matches this weekend will be preceded by a minute's applause ahead of the game. Meanwhile, Prime Minister David Cameron has signed Nelson Mandela's condolence book. Also, Pope Francis has praised Nelson Mandela for forging South Africa with a lot of forgiveness and reconciliation. And a quote from him: real leaders must be ready to sacrifice all for the freedom of their people. I'll be right back with sports. Welcome back to News Today. Now, Black Stars captain Asamoah Gyan has been shortlisted for CAF Awards. Let's take a look at it.
Ghana captain Asamoah Gyan has been shortlisted by CAF for the 2013 African Player of the Year award. The Alain striker is one of 10 players who have been shortlisted following voting from members of the technical and development and media committees from the initial list of nominees. 4 Nigerians, including John Mikelobi, goalkeeper Vincent Enyama, Emmanuel Emenike, and Ahmed Musa, all made the reduced 10-man shortlist. The reigning CAF Player of the Year, Yaya Toure of Ivory Coast, is also in the running to retain his crown, as well as Egypt's Mohamed Aboutrika, who has been nominated for both the African Player of the Year and the Award for Africa-Based Footballer, which he won last year. Members of CAF's Technical and Development and media committees reduced the African Player of the Year award from 25, while the Africa-based list was cut from 21 nominees. The head coaches of the National Football Associations affiliated to CAF will now vote to decide the eventual winners of the 2 categories. The winners will be announced at the Glow CAF Awards Gala scheduled for 9th January next year in Lagos, Nigeria.
That's it for sports. You're welcome back, and Showbiz brings you a farewell song to Nelson Mandela.
There are many people who feel that it is useless and futile for us to continue talking peace and non-violence against a government whose reply is only savage attacks on an unarmed and defenseless people. It is an idea for which I am prepared to die.
One of the things that is difficult for me to comprehend is that we spent such a long time here.
There's Mr. Mandela, Mr. Nelson Mandela, a free man.
We have realized our greatest dream of being free at last in our own country. Never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another. It is time for new hands to lift the burdens. It is in your hands now. God, Well, it is music and dancing that makes me at peace with the world. and at peace with myself. But I don't see much movement at the back there, you know? I would like us to join. Let's just repeat. Let's just repeat it. Okay. Let's just repeat it. Let's all join.
Right, so that's it from Showbiz. And here's what you may not have known, that he was first arrested December 5, 1956, and he died December 5, 2013. And you might want to call it fate, but there's no denying he was a great man, and we love him for all that he's done. That brings us to a close of today's special edition of News Today, which has been dedicated to Nelson Mandela's passing. I'm totally grateful you stay on for the rest of our programs. My name is Kemini Nyamani Amano.